So it's National Apprenticeship Week. We're doing a series of events this week, all to raise awareness of apprenticeships, talk about the vacancies that we've got, and really to answer any questions that you've got and to explain how you might be able to move into an apprenticeship. Quite simply, we need candidates. We need people who are looking for apprenticeships. We have a host or a range of apprenticeship vacancies throughout the year. And quite often we struggle to fill a lot of those roles with good candidates. And a lot of those roles can lead into absolute career length opportunities, providing really, really good money and job security and training. So that's what we're about. As you are aware, we are a housing association, but within that housing association, there is a team called the apprenticeship team, and we sit within Clarion Futures. So yes, we're part of the housing association, but we're a little bit different. We sit in the charitable foundation part of the housing association. We're a national team, so there's 7 of us when we are full, and we operate from Plymouth down in the southwest right the way through up to Newcastle and above, so all of England. And we help recruit in 3 main ways. So we bring people into Clarion on an apprenticeship, and at the moment we've got 44 people on an apprenticeship at Clarion, and that can range from multi-trade, electrical, plumbing, carpentry, through to business admin, finance, HR, procurement. So there's a whole range of industries really that we bring people into on Clarion on an apprenticeship. So that's the first one. The second one is we help people to find apprenticeships through our supply chain. So that's through the companies that work with Clarion. We call that mainly social value, and it's where if we give a contract to a company, then in return we might expect an apprenticeship opportunity to be given to us, and that's where we look to fill it with Clarion residents. And the third one is where we help people to find an apprenticeship outside of Clarion. That could be at your local hairdressers, your local plumbers, your local bookkeepers, etc., etc. So there's 3 main ways in which we help people move into an apprenticeship. A couple of things to say. We help with pre-employment and post-employment. So if you've never done an apprenticeship before, it might be quite daunting. How do you apply? What's a personal statement? What happens if I get an interview? How do I sell myself in an interview? They can all be quite daunting. So we have something called a fast track, and that's our pre-employment program. That's designed to help you be the best you can simply at an interview. What we find is we want you to find the right apprenticeship. Apprenticeships are hard, and if you start an apprenticeship and get 2 months in and think this isn't for me, then it's a waste of your time and it's a waste of our time. So the pre-employment program is all about kind of giving you the bare bones, the good things and the bad things about the role, and allowing you and the employer to make that decision. Is this the right role for you? So we support you in that pre-employment program. And then post-employment, apprenticeships can be really hard. So we have something called a mentoring program, and the mentoring program supports you when you're in that role. What we don't want to do is just start you in an apprenticeship and then leave you to it, because if you're juggling your job, your apprenticeship and your personal life, it's a lot. So the mentoring program is designed to support you throughout the life cycle of that apprenticeship. In terms of numbers, we start about 160 apprentices every year. So it does vary, but around about 160 apprentices every year. So it's quite a lot, and that's why we've got a national team to support those apprentices. So what is an apprenticeship? So many of you will know already what an apprenticeship is, but I'm just going to go over the basics so you are aware. An apprenticeship, quite simply, is where you work and learn at the same time. And a lot of people will have 3 options available a couple of options available to them. You could just get a job, you could go off to university or college, you could go traveling around the world, or you could do nothing at all. An apprenticeship is helping you to learn and earn at the same time. So it is a lot. It's a lot to juggle. Within those apprenticeships, you have something that you might already have heard of, but something called protected learning hours or off-the-job learning. So it's about giving you the time. That's giving you the time. It works out about 6 hours a week, and that's allowing you to study. That's the study part of the job. That's a study part of the apprenticeship. So you have a protected period each week where you can learn and study. That might be you do assignments. It might be you're observed in the workplace, but it's protected for you. And you know, I'm quite old. I've done a lot of jobs, and I've certainly worked for companies where they've never invested in me. They've never given me the time to actually learn and develop. And so I'm just doing a job, and they're just getting their buck from me. What an apprenticeship does is it's an employer saying, do you know what, we want this person to develop, we want this person to learn, and we're going to invest in them. So it's a huge commitment. It's a really positive thing from a company to say if they're going to take on an apprentice. So if you hear something called protected learning hours or off-the-job learning, that's what that is. An apprenticeship can be in terms of its duration and length, it can be anything from 1 year and 1 day through to about 5 years. So if you see something advertised, for example, that's saying it's an apprenticeship, but it only lasts 6 months, it's not an apprenticeship. An apprenticeship genuinely does need to last from anything from 1 year and a day through to about 5 years. Within that, you get levels. So you get levels of apprenticeship. A level 2 is where apprenticeships start. A level 2 apprenticeship is the equivalent to about 5 GCSEs. And then we go up to a level 7. Well, if I actually just quickly go through the levels, level 2 is the equivalent to 5 GCSEs. Level 3 is the equivalent to about 2 A levels. Levels 4 and 5 are the equivalent to that gap in between A levels and a degree. When you see a level 6 apprenticeship, that is a degree level apprenticeship. That's the equivalent to going off to university and doing a degree. And then level 7 is a master's. So level 7 is beyond degree level. So just to sort of give you a breakdown of what the levels mean. There's over 700 different types of apprenticeships. So there's a huge variation. And what happens is your apprenticeship or an apprenticeship would be linked to your job. So there has to be essentially the apprenticeship has to map across to your job. The content of your apprenticeship you need to be doing on a daily basis as part of your job. So they're very much linked, an apprenticeship and the job. You've got something called the IFA, so it's the Institute for Apprenticeships. I'm just mentioning that because it's really important that you find that the standard is there with apprenticeships, because like with employers, you get bad apprenticeships, you get good apprenticeships. The IFA, the Institute for Apprenticeships, ensures that what's being delivered, what's available apprenticeship-wise, is of good standard. I think they're a fantastic, well, I'm going to be biased because I've worked in apprenticeships for many years, but I think they're a fantastic way of starting a career or returning if you're having a career break. They give you a great opportunity, a great way in to a new industry, to a new career. You might have heard of something called the levy. So the levy is essentially a tax that larger organizations pay. And the only way they can benefit from paying that tax is by employing apprentices back. So if you hear of something called the levy, I just wanted to mention it. It's essentially a tax that large organizations pay, but it allows them, those organizations, to then employ apprentices. So an employer will take you on as an apprentice, but typically the employer won't be delivering the apprenticeship. The apprenticeship is delivered by another company, another organization called the training provider or college. Quite often it's a college, but as a sort of a generic term, we'd call it a training provider. So let's say you're working at, I don't know, Smith Finance, you're working at Smith Finance, but then you'll have a separate organization, a training provider, that will come in and set you assignments, observe you in the workplace, and allow you to study for that apprenticeship. The final part, then, you might have heard something called endpoint assessment, but as the apprenticeship draws to an end, you'll reach a point a little bit like kind of when you're ready to take a test at school, but where you might have to present what you've learned do a presentation, answer some questions, and maybe submit a piece of work to demonstrate that you're capable of hitting those apprenticeship standards. So I want to just move on. There's loads of myths around apprenticeships. Apprenticeships have been going many, many years, and over the time, there's a lot of myths that are sort of built up around apprenticeships. So I just want to cover off 5 of the top ones that I know quite often pop up. The first one is apprenticeships are only available in manual industries. Historically, the reason for this myth is because that's kind of how apprenticeships started. They were the sort of foundation of them. They were just for manual industries. But as we've developed, particularly since guidelines were changed in 2017, there's now many apprenticeships in many areas. I mentioned 700 before. So yes, absolutely, you can do an apprenticeship in the manual industries, anything from, you know, electrical, gas, plumbing, carpentry, engineering, but also apprenticeships are available in all other walks of life, whether that be becoming some sort of teacher, finance, HR. I'm not going to list them all, but they are not just manual industries. So that's the first myth. The second one is apprentices don't earn very much. Well, this is really, when it comes to earning, this is the first thing I'd be asking if it was myself. How much am I going to get paid? On average, the average apprentice that we help move into an apprenticeship is on about 19 grand. So as an individual, you would need to decide, is this something that I can afford to do, or no, it's not. If it's not, then perhaps apprenticeships aren't for you. But they are a great way of learning, and the lovely thing about it is you don't need to pay anything back. So you will be trained up, but you do not need to pay something back. You go off to university, you're going to have a debt at the end of it, and it's a big consideration. So yes, typically the apprentice salary might be slightly lower than a typical job, but where it can get you in 5 years' time is potentially huge. Third myth I wanted to mention was apprenticeships are only available for school leavers. That is absolute rubbish. Yes, you have to be 16 to be an apprenticeship, so the minimum age is 16. However, there's no upper age limit. We've just started an apprentice in their 60s. And as I said earlier on, it's a fantastic way of actually reinventing yourself, or thinking, do you know what, I've done this career for 20 years. I want a different career. So in terms of ages, there's, as long as you're 16 plus, that's all you need to be for an apprenticeship. The next one is, the next myth is employers don't value apprenticeships. So I would say, hand on heart, Clarion loves its apprentices. We actively recruit apprentices, and in actual fact, 92% currently of our apprentices convert from their apprenticeship into a permanent role at Clarion. And that's really important. Most employers will tell you, if they're going to take on an apprentice, it's a huge amount of work to take on an apprentice, to invest the time and the energy and the resources in training that apprentice to be of a good standard. So the last thing they want to do then is let that apprentice go, because they've put all that time and energy in. So employers, I would say, employers absolutely do value a good apprentice. And then the last myth that I just wanted to bust is, and I've kind of mentioned on it already, but apprenticeships won't lead to a full-time job. Well, again, that's an absolute myth, because as I've said, if an employer's invested in you and you're a good candidate, then they will absolutely want to keep you and offer you a permanent role once your apprenticeship has finished. So that was just a section on the myths. That all said, in all honesty, apprenticeships are really hard. I think they're hard to deliver, and they're really hard to do as an individual. But I think in a lot of things in life, anything that's hard is probably worth it. I mentioned before, if you're doing an apprenticeship, you're juggling your job, you're juggling the apprenticeship, and you're juggling your personal life and everything else that's thrown in. So before you consider it, before you go forward into that apprenticeship, you need to be ready. You need to commit to it, and you need to say, yeah, this is going to be hard, but I'm going to stick it out. Because the last thing anyone wants is, we don't want you to start into an apprenticeship, get a couple of months in and think, no, it's too hard. it's just a waste of everyone's time. So yes, they are hard, but I think if you know that and you can go in with your eyes wide open, then you've got much more chance of actually kind of seeing it through. We talked about the pay, and I would have said, like a job, you get good employers and bad employers. You get good apprenticeships and you get bad apprenticeships. So how can you navigate that? Well, hopefully that's why you're on this call today, or that's why you're listening, is because there's an apprenticeship team at Clarion and we can help you to find a good apprenticeship. We make sure that we only provide good apprenticeships. So we get rid of all the rubbish employers. We get rid of all the apprenticeships that aren't good, and we only offer you good roles. That's really important. One comment on functional skills. You need functional skills as part of the apprenticeship. They go hand in hand. So if you have just studied for functional skills, maths, English, you're in a good position. If perhaps you're returning to work and it's been many, many years since you've done your maths and English, it can be quite daunting, and we hear this a lot. But again, we've got support in place, either via ourselves or with the training providers, to help you to study for your maths and English. It's not a massive section of the apprenticeship, but it is part of it. So what I would have said, and I'll make sure that we put up kind of next steps at the end of this webinar. But if you've got a question or you've got fears or concerns or anything over any of these, but particularly functional skills, then just reach out to us. And the last thing to say around the fact they're not all rosy is there's a lot of self-guided learning with apprenticeships. So when you study at school or college, you get told what to do. There's a lot more kind of do this assignment. With an apprenticeship, particularly the higher up the levels you go, there's much more emphasis or expectation on the apprentice to manage their own learning. So you've got to be proactive with an apprenticeship. With an apprenticeship, if you sit back and you wait to be told, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, it's not going to work and you're going to get behind. You have to be self-motivated, and you have to understand that it's self-guided learning. It's up to you to be hungry, to want to learn, to want to improve yourself. And I think where we have candidates come in and they come in with that attitude, we find that they do so much better with their apprenticeships. So why do one? It's a great way of getting into a company. It's a great way of developing a career, of launching a career. We talked about the salary. So yes, you might be starting on a low salary, but typically what we find, not just us, but national statistics, is once you've completed your apprenticeship, you're certainly in the first 5 to 10 years, you will be on more money than your average graduate is. You can earn good money once you've completed your apprenticeship. So it's a great way of starting a career, reinventing yourself, launching yourself with a company. It's a great chance to invest in yourself, to say, actually, I don't just want a job where I just do the same thing. I want to develop. I want to progress. This is where I want to be in 5 years. Well, an apprenticeship is a great way of helping you to get to that position. There's a lot of progression. So we have a lot of people that will join us on a level 2 apprenticeship. They get that done, and then they do a level 4 apprenticeship. They get that done, and then they do a level 6 apprenticeship. And we have a lot of people that have now done a degree level apprenticeship, and they turn around and say, do you know what, I never thought I'd have got a degree, but they have via the apprenticeship route. So it's a genuine pathway for you to study and develop and become as expert as you want to be in a particular subject. I've talked about our average salary. So again, our average salary is 19,000. At Clarion, it's actually a little bit more than that. So if you were to do one of our trade roles with us, like a multi-trade apprenticeship, you could be looking at about 22,000–23,000 pounds a year, which is a fabulous salary to start on for a multi-trade apprenticeship, just as an example. And the last one I'd say is the support available. So you're all on this call because you're interested in an apprenticeship. I've said they're hard, they are hard, but we've got a national apprenticeship team here to support you every step of the way, right from completing an application, submitting a personal statement, interview skills, securing that first couple of days, first couple of weeks, first couple of months. You've got that support available via the Clarion Futures Apprenticeship team. So in terms of next steps, what do you do next? My colleague has, or I think we're about to post in the chat a link to our vacancy page. So if you want to see what vacancies we've got currently at the moment, there's a link in the chat. We've got about 20 nationally at the moment, but that always changes kind of over the sort of the weeks and months, or throughout the whole year. That changes. So we've got that vacancy page. But if it's easier, you just email us, and again we'll post that in the chat. It's just apprenticeships@clarionhg.com. Email us and we will come back to you and start that conversation. And it might be some of you might be saying, do you know what, I'm interested, but I've got no interview skills, help. I haven't got a CV, help. I don't know how to start, or you've got specific questions about apprenticeship or concerns, anything at all, just contact us and we will come back to you. We'll start that conversation and we will help you get to where you want to be when it comes to apprenticeships. There is, I should just point out, loads of other ways. You could just Google it. If you didn't want our support, you can just Google apprenticeships. You got a .gov website, you got Indeed, you got all those kind of standard ones where you can kind of click interest in apprenticeships. But if you want to help with it, then we're literally here and waiting to hear from you. So that's next steps. And that is the end of my little presentation. So what I'd say is, if anyone has any questions, feel free to, if you can raise your hand, because I'll need to unmute you. So if you've got any questions, either raise your hand, I'll unmute you, or just pop it in the chat, in any text in the chat, and I'm more than happy to answer you. So I'll just give it a minute just to see if anyone has any questions. And same goes as well, just in case anyone on my team who's listening realizes that I've missed anything, or thinks that I should add anything, then just shout out. Just give it a couple of seconds more. That must have been a brilliant presentation then, because I've obviously answered everything. Okay, so that's it. So I'd just like to thank you all. Oh, hang on, sorry, we've got a question.
I'm sorry, Alex, can I ask a question? Is there an upper age limit for apprentices, or and what is the age range?
So you need to be 16 plus for an apprenticeship. Other than that, no. Other than that, we've just taken on a 64-year-old, I'm 62, 64-year-old, someone in the 60s. So no upper age limit. And it's a great way for people to reinvent themselves and to relearn or come back to the workplace, if they've had time out. So no, as long as they're 16 plus. Nothing else. Okay, fabulous. So we've posted the kind of the next steps and the ways to get in contact for more information. I just want to thank you for your time today, for getting involved, and yeah, hopefully we will wait to hear from you. Many thanks.